and this group here today. I'm saying hello to Eva. I know that most of these things happen only thanks to Eva. So thank you, Eva, and hello to Andres Ucros, which I think is over there. So I'm very happy to be here. The first time I heard about the Center for Resolution of Intractable Conflict, I said, it was actually when I met John. I don't know why I hadn't heard about the center. And then I said, oh my God, this is designed for Colombia, right? Possibly for some marriages also, but specifically for Colombia, right? And since the first time I heard this, I thought this is something. And since then, as John says, we've been talking for the past years, and it's been a very fruitful conversation. I actually have been in the shadows for many years, involved in the peace process. You know, as psychoanalysts, I come from being a psychoanalyst, we are used to sitting back somehow and looking forward into the couch, right? And so I was like that in the peace process for many years, just helping to build and craft the peace process that were later implemented by President Santos. And so I'm part of this group that John, the title also has been created by John, which of those of us who work beyond the couch, which is a word for many of us. And I'm also very happy because this is a moment, as I will try to show during my brief talk, that Colombia needs the international community. And I also would dare say that the international community needs to do something about Colombia. There's a global need for the peace of Colombia. What happens in Colombia has an influence certainly in the big region of the Americas and somehow in the rest of the world. So I'm gonna share the screen just for a brief moment to show my presentation. I'm gonna show so that you get a sense of what I'm gonna be saying in the next minutes, but then I'll get rid of the presentation and talk directly and connect directly with you, because that's one of the things we've been learning how to use Zoom, all of us, right? And one of the things that seems to be better is not to hide beneath a presentation, but to get connected with the people via Zoom. So I don't know if I have permission to share the screen at this point, John. I think I might. Let me try. Am I sharing screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's see if this works. Okay, let's put it here. Okay, as I said, this is just to give you a sense of the sort of thing I'll be speaking during this brief talk. I will try to say a bit about where do we come from, right? And certainly we come in Colombia from a big culture of violence. A country with a very severe inequality. Something is happening here. Okay, it's working now. With a very weak judicial system, with a high level of corruption. You know the problem we have with drug trafficking in Colombia, and a very special relation to religion, which I think is a factor in some of the things that are happening in Colombia. We are now, then I'm going to move to talk a bit of where we are now, how we've seen lots of, let's call them partial peace agreements in the past 20 or 25 or 30 years, and I'll try to show why that's the case, which ended up in a constitution, a new constitution in 1991, which we thought would change Colombia in many ways. And then all these processes have gone through with a lack of real structural change in the country. And then we arrived to this peace process with Santos, which brought new things to the peace process, like involving the victims, involving the military, and involving the international community. Those things are at least, I think, the main three innovations of the peace process that came with the Santos process. But we know that the implementation has been let's say, a poor implementation, as I will try to show, and we're somehow back to some people feel that we're back to so-called normality in Colombia, which is a horrible normality, which is something we definitely don't want to happen. And then I'll speak a bit about our proposal, which will have to do with a view of thinking of a eventual new peace process, which would be more the people's peace process than than an elitist peace process. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that. I will try to show how important the ELN can become an opportunity for a big change in Colombia. I will try to show also how the international community is going to be crucial in the new step we are facing. I will also talk a bit about something that will resonate with all that has been said during this morning, which is what I would like to call the new role of peace experts. I think that's something that we're all thinking around the world, and how can we accompany peace processes? What should experts in peace and in negotiation think? And I'll certainly tell you about the Truth Commission, which is not only the place where I'm working now, but also I think that's the last, I'm going to say something very strong, it's the last hope for the peace process that was signed with the FARC a few years ago now. It's a chance for the peace process really to survive and to become strong and make a real change. And of course, I will finally tell you a bit about a project we're working on at my university, at Rosario University, with a center where we work with a few colleagues, which is a demonstration project, which is a post-COVID sort of a project, because the world is changing, and how we can take advantage of this post-COVID area to really make a difference. So I'm going to get rid of my presentation now, so that you have a sense of the sort of thing I'm going to be talking about for the next minutes. I'll be looking at the presentation myself, just so that I can talk about the things I've just mentioned to you. So going a bit more back into where we come from, let me tell you, Colombia in the past, it's difficult to say. We could begin the story wherever we want. We can say all this began in 1980 with President Betancourt, which is one of the best known peace processes of Colombia. Some people say we should begin even earlier than that, in the 70s or 60s. As it happens, in many areas in the world, the war and the peace seem to go together. They are kind of simultaneous processes, and you can either think of them of several moments in the war and several peace processes, or as we are beginning to think of it now in Colombia, it's better to think of it as one war and one peace process that has gone through several different stages. We think now that it's better to understand it in that way, more than to think that we are having several peace processes. When in earlier presentations today, of course, it's a different context. I know when this dilemma about a negotiation that's used to talk and to get a dialogue in the sense Gadamer defines dialogue and what's disruptive. In a different sense, I would say that this is also true in all these processes. No, some people, the war and the peace process intertwine between each other, right? You even hear people who are in the war. I've always heard when I was talking with the ELN people that their struggle, that their war was their effort to achieve peace, no? So even always you hear that the war is something that people do to arrive to peace. And in the other, it's also true that sometimes you hear that the negotiation table is a battle. No, it's a prolongation of the war in the table. So you get the two things. No, you get the two views that to have a dialogue and a negotiation is another moment of the war, and you can also think of it as saying that the war is another moment in the process of achieving peace. And both arguments have a truth in their own right, no? And they have a point, let's say, somehow. So this is something I think we have to bear in mind now that we are in a strange moment in Colombia because of the peace process and because of the COVID and the virus. As you know, besides all the suffering that has come with the virus, also many good things have come with the virus. People are thinking different things. The people are prioritizing in a different way many things. So the thing is it's not only a bad thing somehow, it's also bringing good things to the world, I think, this situation. So as I was saying, Colombia has been in this war and peace process for many years amongst, in between a culture of violence, a culture of inequality, a culture of a system where we have a very weak judicial system, where it's a very high level of corruption. And of course, all this has been strongly permeated by drug trafficking. As you know, this is one of some people say, and they have also a point there, that the big problem of Colombia, is drug trafficking. And there are ways to justify that. I don't think it's true to say that that's the case. And we have also to look at it the other way around. Why is drug trafficking so common in Colombia? No, it's not only what drug trafficking causes things, but it's also caused by other things that we have to somehow address, and think about. I have, right. So this is part of what I meant by this, to understand where we're coming from. With this in mind, we can move to this idea of where we are now. We achieved a very important process with during the Santos administration. You know that we had a peace process signed with the FARC, and the country did change a lot. The statistics, I'm not going to show statistics today, but I'm going to mention them. Kidnapping was reduced enormously, and which was one of the big, some people, if you ask Colombian people, one of the two main things that was a big problem in Colombia, besides the war itself, is drug trafficking and kidnapping. When we say this, we nevertheless have to bear in mind that when we say drug trafficking, it is true that drug trafficking became very well known nationally and internationally, mainly initially because of the people who were kidnapped. I'm saying this to have it very clear in our minds that the worst thing that's happened in Colombia, we wouldn't be able to, being fair, we shouldn't say it's kidnapping, because lots of killings and lots of suffering of people who were not so visible as those who were kidnapped have been suffering in the conflict of Colombia for many years. So that's something we have to be very careful, especially as some of you might have read in the news last week. For the first time, the FARC, the legal FARC, now acknowledged that they had kidnapped and all the horrible things that had been done during the kidnapping. That's something which is kind of obvious. It's kind of a truism, but it was new in Colombia, for the FARC and the legal FARC to acknowledge that. And that's a big moment. But I've heard people saying after that happened last week, so that you get a sense of the dynamics of Colombia, I've heard many people saying, okay, this is true, but let's not overemphasize that, because the biggest problem and the big suffering of Colombia, and most people have died in Colombia, not by kidnapping, but and they are invisible people, poor peasants, people in different regions of the country where nobody knows they died. There's just a statistic, another social leader killed. As you know, that's one of the most complicated problems that's happening now in Colombia. So that's something we have to bear in mind, how we have to be very careful in valuing what has happened in that sense. The other thing I was mentioning about where we are now is that all these processes of peace and war have not really brought a big structural change in Colombia. The inequality, the social system as it works, the country has developed a lot, no? Of course, economically in many ways, but the social structure, the system of power in Colombia, and the legal system hasn't have a big change. So we are all kind of trying to understand, why is it that the conflict persists? That's the big question. You know, the Colombian people had the illusion somehow that with the Santos peace process, a huge change will come in Colombia, and the international community had expected that also, no? And there are some big changes. We can say that we have to wait, and yes, we have to wait for some changes. It is true, but it is also true that we see many symptoms of the old Colombia beginning to happen again, and it's difficult nowadays to think that it's just time we need. We could hope that's the case, but it's probably not true. If we don't come with something more structural, something more different, probably the thing could go backwards and backwards. So we have to be optimistic in part. We have to keep on trying to force the implementation of the agreements of the arrived at with the FARC. But we must also be realistic that probably that was another piece, another chapter, let's say, in the global peace process of Colombia. It's a very big one. It was a very special one. Probably it's the biggest one, and the one that achieves more things. But maybe it didn't arrive somehow to the root of the conflict and to the root of how to stop really all of these things to happen again and to be repeated once and again. So with all this in mind, this is what justifies what I would like to talk about for the rest of the minutes I have, which is our proposal. When I say our proposal, it is a group of people in Colombia and outside of Colombia who are conscious that we have to come quickly with something that would really help us to be successful with this process. Let's say friends of the peace of Colombia. And I think there's a big group of that nationally and internationally. And that's probably the importance of this meeting. So let me talk about the first point of that and go a bit more in depth about that. If you look at the backwards of the agreements that were made and the partial agreements that were made in the past, you can say 30 or 40 years, they have all been done by elite groups. And I'm using the word elite in a very wide sense. Legal elites and illegal ones. I mean, I'm calling the guerrilla people, the illegal armed groups, they are an elite in Colombia. I'm calling the paramilitary an elite. I'm calling the government an elite. I'm calling the wealthy people in Colombia with let's say legal money an elite also. I'm calling all the criminal structures of Colombia, which are huge, which are not exactly the same as drug trafficking. They're linked to drug trafficking, but there are huge amounts of money with illegal mining also, and many other illegal sources of money and criminality, which are also elites somehow. I'm calling elite also the big groups of the religious, the authorities of the main religions in Colombia, mainly Catholic religion. But so the argument we're trying to share with you today, which is something we're working on, is all those processes has been agreed, and all those agreements have been reached at amongst the elite of the country, and not with the people. Let's talk about the people. It's very difficult to talk about the people, but if we use good faith, we know what we mean by the people. No, it's something that is true. It's it's a group of people in a society that you can identify the people, kind of opposite to the elites and those making the decisions and having the power. And so we were in our center at the university. There was we've been doing a kind of detailed research on that, and it's very clear, in most of the, if you look backwards, that the people have participated either nothing or in a very small dose. They're being participating in all this process. And why is this very important? This is very important because the big group, the guerrilla that's still kind of active, is the ELN. And this is the main argument of the ELN. So the ELN, and I'm a witness of that because I spoke with them for 2 or 3 years, the dialogues we had with them. And this is something they have, it's very clear in their mind. And I think they're honest in that. And I think they mean it, And some people say, oh my God, that's why it's impossible to talk with the ELN, because they say they cannot decide things that the people have to decide. But who is the people? Who? And then, yes, of course it's tricky. Of course it's difficult. But they are experts on that. I mean, there are people who are really experts in understanding what it means to have the community participate in something. And I think this is an argument, and this is one of the roads to begin a conversation with the ELN. And I think that's something that's not only needed with the ELN, but it's probably needed for the whole country. That's the thing that has been lacking. It's been in the agenda of all the processes, of course. It was the first point in the agenda with which we kind of talked with the ELN, the participation of the people. And that point became a mess. There was no understanding on that. But I think that we failed on that, and the ELN failed on that. I mean, it was because it became a battle. At a certain moment, you felt like we were talking before, not that we were talking to have a real dialogue, which means a dialogue means to arrive to a third position, right? I mean, if you're talking to someone and at the end, the position of one person prevails, and that's the official position of the two, probably that means that they did not have a dialogue. When you have a dialogue, you necessarily have to build a third position, which was not the case, and probably both parties were kind of trying to win the war in the table instead of the battlefield, but it was just a prolongation of the war into the table. So I think this is the first point, and and we have to work on that. And if this is true, and if this is confirmed, and if people agree with this, then we have to come and study and get in touch with real experts on how to do this, because this is something that has to do with political will, of course. You have to have on both sides the political will, but you also have to have the methodology to do that. And that's, I think, looking backwards, one of the things we were lacking in this conversation with the ELN I was involved with. I think that at a certain point, initially, there was a political will to do that and to allow the participation of the comunidad, we say in Spanish, right? The participación de la comunidad was the word we used, and that's how it's written in the agenda. But that never came to being, And that has never come to being. Even with the FARC, there was a bit of that, but many people say now that one of the reasons because of which probably the agreement of the FARC has been so difficult to implement is because it was something kind of alien to the people. The people were not involved with that. So this is a point I wanted to share with this special group with you, which I'm talking today, because I know there's a lot of expertise in all of you, and I would really love to understand and hear what you think about that first point. And I also then, and as I mentioned, if we arrive to that, I think this is the road, this is the password, to have a conversation and a dialogue with the ELN. The second thing, and I'm just going to say 3 or 4, and then I'll stop to hear your comments and your and your ideas. The second point is the international community. We are losing that. There was a moment in the peace process with the FARC where the international community was extremely actively involved. That's why I came to meet John and many people in the UK, in the US, in many places in the world. And but now I see that this is kind of still there. There's still an interest in the international community. The international community is looking into Colombia, what's going on there? What happened with this peace process, which we all dreamt with, no? Because there was a moment where the Pope, presidents of all over the world were kind of interested in what was going on in Colombia. And I feel with certain sadness that that's a bit coming down, but I think we're still on time to activate that. And this is my second big point, that we have to keep that alive, because I think that this was the process where the international community was more actively involved. And I think that's a very valuable thing. And I think we have to find ways to keep that. As you see, I'm not bringing today solutions. I'm bringing problems to share with you, a few ideas, some insights, hoping to get from you also some ideas on how to move them through. The third thing is, and I think this group is convinced about that, we have to discuss and think about the new role, what I would like to call the new role of experts in negotiation and then experts in accompanying peace processes. There are so many people with so many lived experiences on that, and so many lessons learned from the many processes in the world. But as someone was saying earlier in the presentation, we're probably stuck a bit with old ways with old ideas about how to reach peace, how to mediate, how to negotiate. So I think we have to create an atmosphere of real openness, of acknowledging all that we kind of ignore about this has to be done, and trying to arrive at an attitude. We have to find new ways to do this, new ways to accompany processes, new ways to be experts in accompanying peace processes. This reminds me of what happened in the other work I did for many years that John mentioned initially, working with homeless people diagnosed with schizophrenia and severe psychosis, which is the first thing we had to do is to acknowledge that we didn't know how to do that, no? And that we had many lessons learned, but many failures, and that we have to be really open for creative and new ways to do the job. So this is something we are encouraging a lot to, and I think this is especially true for Colombia. We've tried and we've been very open to learn from other experiences, but I think Colombia has to come with its new creative way of arriving to its own peace. And it's a very peculiar country, a very special country, where we have to really kind of find new ways to achieve that. And I think this group I'm talking to today is the perfect scenario to talk about this. Finally, the Truth Commission. As you know, or probably maybe you might not know that, the Truth Commission has just one more year to go. The Truth Commission ends in November 2021. And the Truth Commission, of course, there's also the transitional justice going on, which is going to be on for many years, which is part of what was agreed with the FARC, and also the unity to look for people who have disappeared. Those three organisms are part of the same system. But the Truth Commission, we're beginning to see, is a last chance of two things, of understanding of three things, of understanding in Colombia what happened, completing the truth, secondly, of understanding why did that happen, why did it happen, and the third thing is, what are the things we have to do for the same thing not to repeat itself, which is what is happening now, beginning to happen. So that mission, we have one more year, of the Truth Commission, and its final report, and its final understanding is going to be crucial. I think that's the most valuable thing that's left of what was agreed with the FARC in 2016. I think that's probably what I'm trying to help on that as far as I can, and many of us are doing that. And so that's another point which I would like to emphasize. The real last thing I was going to say is that we're doing sort of a demonstration project together with the Truth Commission and other groups and the university with which I work, which is Rosario University. It's kind of I don't know how to really try, it's a demonstration project in which we're kind of putting together small groups of representative people that we think belong or come from what we are calling the people. Of course, we're not excluding the elite, no? This is not a way to discriminate against all the groups but we're including other people, and elites are becoming a minority in those groups, but they are represented over there. And we're doing some, let's call them exercises of conversation and dialogue, because when I say that we have to find a new way to work this conflict of Colombia, this intractable conflict in Colombia, where we're looking for new ways to do that. And we say that one of the things that is lacking is the participation of the people. Well, right from the beginning, we decided we have to begin to craft this new eventual methodology and this new process that will begin whenever it begins. That's going to be decided by political dynamics, no? Probably has to do with who is the next president in Colombia. It doesn't matter, no? But the important thing is to have the substance to really understand what is what would be the methodology and the process to go ahead once we have a new opportunity. John, I think I would like to stop here and give the chance of this great group to comment or ask questions or whatever is needed.